Hi guys, and welcome to the next WGU Football Insights Q&A. Delighted to welcome Dominic Roma today. Something we've not covered. Dom's the head of education and welfare at Barnsley Football Club, and a subject that we've not covered at all yet. So really looking forward to this today. So Dom, thanks for giving up your time.
No worries.
For your contribution to this series. So if we start off, as we do with most of these Q&As, if you start off by giving a bit of your background, your kind of journey through football and how you've ended up in the role that you're currently in.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Initially, my journey started at Sheffield United when I was 16. So I was on the old scholarship programme then, where you did a 3-year scholarship and then you went on to do a professional contract. So I did 3-year scholarship and then I did a 2-year professional contract, which took me to 21. After that, obviously, professional football didn't work out, so I always had a bit of an ambition to go into teaching after. So I went and played part-time, semi-professional in non-league, and then went to university, did my sports science degree, and then I managed to get a job initially as a PE support assistant, I think it were, at a secondary school in Sheffield. And then that led into teaching, and I was there for about 8 years teaching PE. Then went on to a head of year role at a school in Derby, and then this job popped up at Barnsley 2 years ago. So that's kind of how I got to working in football. But I've always been involved in it in terms of playing, and I'm still playing now. Fortunate enough to still be playing. So yeah, I've always been involved in it.
Cool. And then, so in terms of the actual role, we see it a lot now, don't we? Like, a lot of clubs are employing, heads of education, and there's a real emphasis, I suppose, or I think a bit more of an emphasis on the education side of things for players now. So in terms of the role, what does it entail? So for someone who might be thinking, someone like yourself, really, that was interested and is interested in education, but also loves football, what does the role itself entail?
I think it differs from club to club, depending on the staffing levels at that club. Obviously, like your bigger clubs will have more people in the education department. But essentially at Barnsley, I'm responsible for tracking and monitoring the progress of all academy players. So that's right from under 9s right up to under 18s. The under 9s to 16s is more liaising with schools, seeing how the players are getting on in terms of their attitude to learning, what the current grades are looking like, are they on track to meet current and target grades, and then with regards to the professional development phase, which is under 18s, liaising with the college that deliver our BTEC programme, seeing how the players are getting on, again tracking and monitoring their progress against what we set as targets with the LFE. So yeah, it kind of entails the education side of it, but I'm also responsible for the life skills provision of the players as well. So that can be anything from taking the lads to university open days, arranging workshops or lifestyle workshops in the club, either through what I've sourced or through the great provision that we get from the LFE and PFA as well. So it kind of involves, it's more of a holistic role as opposed to just set on education. You've got the life skills alongside it as well.
So in terms of that then, so, I suppose it's the same as any kind of education sector or environment. There's probably going to be times when players aren't interested or aren't motivated within the educational side of things.
Yeah.
So within your role, how do you look to balance the playing versus, I suppose, making sure that they're keeping up to scratch or keeping up to a certain standard from an education perspective as well as playing?
Yeah, I mean, standards are set really high from day release. We get under 15s, 16s coming on day release, 1 day a week, where they do part of football of the day, and then the afternoon they have with me and some teachers that we've got coming in. So standards in terms of education are set in day release. So when they come into the professional development phase, they know that there's an importance and an emphasis placed on education as well. I understand that they're there to be professional footballers, as I was, 15 years ago. So I get that that's what they want to do. But my role is to ensure that those lads come out with the qualifications that they need at the end of the scholarship. I mean, if they go on and have a successful career in football, brilliant. But the stats say that not a lot of the lads will. And I try to use myself as an example of that as well. I'm living proof that you don't go into football and have 15 years at the top side of the game, Premier League, Championship, in the Football League. There is avenues away from football. So I try and use myself as an example, and also maintain the high standards that we have in the club. The academy manager is really good on pushing education as well. He is, he had a very good football career in terms of the level that he played at, and he's educated himself after football as well, so he understands the importance of it. So yeah, it's kind of a collective at the club. The lads understand that they need to have the qualifications when they leave the club, and they also need to, know that it is going to benefit them at some stage, whether that's when they leave at 18 or 21, or if they do have a good career and they play till 35. There's something there for them whenever they choose to call upon it, really.
Yeah. And because the stats around it are scary, I suppose.
Yeah.
Less than 1% chance of actually making it to top flight football. So
yeah.
I suppose your job, I suppose it must be difficult sometimes to balance the expectations of players, but then also understanding the real world, around it as well. That must be quite difficult sometimes.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the nature of the job that you get into. You understand that the lads are there to try and be professional footballers, and it's my job and the rest of the staff's job to kind of get them to understand that these qualifications that they are getting and will get when they leave the club will benefit them, like I said, whether that's in 2 years' time or 15 years' time.
Yeah. And just on kind of the skill set required within your job role, you've mentioned yourself that I suppose you have a good understanding of the demands of the industry from a playing perspective.
Yeah.
And I think this Q&A is probably going to be quite interesting for either people or students or individuals involved in football thinking about careers in education, but it might also interest students who are studying more of an educational course who aren't really involved in football. But would you say having a good understanding of the demands of the industry helps you in your role, within your role as an head of education?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it does because, like I say, I've come through the system, so to speak. I was fortunate enough to play for my country as well at 18s, 19s, and I thought I was going to go on and have a great football career, but that didn't work out. So I've kind of come full circle with it, and I'm lucky enough that I went down the education route as well as playing alongside of it as well. I've seen, how the modern players changed and developed and evolved from when I was a scholar to what they are now. I weren't involved in football education up until 2 years ago, but the clubs that I played for always took players on loan from professional clubs. So I kind of got to see that evolution, so to speak, of the younger type player and what it looks like now. So I think that, probably does give me a bit of a benefit and a greater insight as to what it looks like. But professional football is getting more and more professional, and more educational people are getting into the game as well. So, I think understanding the game potentially has its benefit, but also being an academic and things like that will have its benefits as well. So it kind of depends on what kind of role you're going into. The education side of it is always going to be focused on education, but understanding it probably would help me settle in a little bit quicker than if I hadn't have had a football background.
And in terms of that, you mentioned in terms of your role that you liaise a lot with schools and colleges, you know, with the BTEC courses and stuff.
Yeah.
So in terms of like the skill set required within your role, so, you know, things like communication, are there certain skills that you think are quite important in terms of the role of leading the education and welfare side?
I think obviously, like you mentioned there, communication is massively important, because I've got to get reports in from, you know, an array of schools around the area that the lads go to, from 9 to 16s, as well as obviously having that communication with the college tutors that come in, communicating with the coaches around how the lads are getting on in terms of the work that they're producing, how they're getting on in terms of progress with the BTEC courses and their MVQ and the level 2 that they do the coaching. So communication is really good. I would say learning how to prioritise as well. It's something that again, I'm fortunate enough, when you've been in teaching and you've taught 25 hours a week and you're dealing with reports, behavioural issues, things like that, you do learn to prioritise and time manage, which has benefited me in this role as well. I kind of can understand what I need to get done, you know, in the immediate, what might need doing a week later or 2 weeks later and further down the line. So yeah, I would say that being able to time manage and prioritise is really good as well. And also just being confident as well, being confident in yourself, being confident that you know that you can support the club in whatever aspect of your role they require. You know, if that's delivering a workshop to parents, you know, being confident that you can do that as well.
And in terms of the players specifically at Barnsley, do they follow, is it more of a part-time model that they follow? And then just a second question to that is, if there's a player that might be struggling academically, what's kind of the process involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, from 9s to 14s, we don't have any education with regards to that. I know some Cat 1 clubs may get players in a little bit younger to do day release and stuff. But from 15, 16s, like I say, we have a hybrid model where they come in on a Tuesday, kind of sample what it would be like in the life of a scholar. So they have football in the morning, then education with me, and then professional development phase of scholars. Again, it is a full-time course that they're doing, but they fit it into a day and a half. So they have a Monday afternoon where it's college-based work, and then the whole day on Wednesday to do the college work as well. So yeah, it's a full-time course that they're doing, but they're doing it across 2 days. Again, which shows a commitment that the lads have to have. Obviously, if they was in a college, they'd be doing little chunks of work across the 5 days. But because obviously they're here to be footballers, it gets them into the mode of cracking on with the work and seeing it as an important piece of their scholarship journey, so to speak. That they do crack on with it in that day and a half. If we have any players that are, you know, struggling academically in terms of the work that they're producing or the standard of the work that they're producing, with the professional development phase, we can access funding from the LFE to get additional learning support. If I feel that scholars may need an additional tutor or a bit of dedicated one-to-one time, there is support from the LFE, which is good for the players. Again, that would be liaising with college tutors, NVQ tutors, and seeing what kind of plan we can put in place for the players to make sure that they are either catching up the work that they need to do, or even as sometimes we've had it, a little bit of guidance can set them off and they end up exceeding the targets that they've got. Lower down, 9s to 16s, again, it's just, you know, liaising with schools. I get reports in every 12 weeks for the 9s to 16s from the schools, and if I, you know, kind of notice that an attitude to learning slipped or a current grade has slipped or anything like that, then I'll offer my support to the school from the football club. If the school take me up on that, I'll go in and have a meeting with heads of year or assistant principal or teachers with a player and parent and again, put a plan in place that benefits the player and the school. I think it helps that the players understand that I'm interested in their education. I think it, again, being in teaching benefits me in that, because I've been in them meetings that I would be going into in the school, or, you know, I'd be sat on the other side as a teacher. Now I'm going in from the football club offering my support. So, yeah, it's just individual cases we have individual plans for.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So, and in terms of your role, do you ever feel or notice, or are you a bit more sensitive to certain times of the football calendar, I suppose? Or
yeah,
obviously you liaise between the club and between the education provider. Do you think that, or do you feel in your experience that sometimes the football can have an effect on the academic performance, whether it's positive or negative? Do you feel there is an effect from the actual playing perspective?
I've not noticed it in my role, to be honest, in the 2 years that I've been there. As a club, we tend to stop day release when lads are coming into around their exam periods. Again, you know, academy manager's brilliant with that. He understands that GCSEs are important, so we don't get players in on day release when they're coming up to the GCSEs. No, I've not really noticed that football does affect it. The schools are really good as well in using, you know, us as a tool to enhance what's going on in school as well. So, like I said, you know, if a player, you know, his attitude to learning's dropped, all it is a case of a phone call or an email to myself, and everybody's on track then to ensure that we're all working toward the same goal of the player maintaining his attitude to learning, or even increasing it, or increasing a target level or a current level. So yeah, I've not noticed it in the 2 years. It might be something that crops up soon, or next year or the year after, but at the moment we've been quite good with players and parents understanding that there is an importance to education as well.
In terms of the release process, so if there's a player that's being released by the club, what's the process of supporting their career path or their education after they've been released?
With 9s to 16s, again, I'll get in touch with the school. You let the school know that what's happened, if the player gives us permission to do that, and parents. Offer our support to the schools. Offer support to the players as well. The coaches will then maybe ask the players if they want to go on a trial at another club, if the club can arrange that or the coach can arrange that. So for 9s to 16s, it's a little bit different to professional development phase. The PDP phase, I'll have one-to-one meetings with the players. I'll go through the strengths and weaknesses of the programme and what they've perceived as the strengths and weaknesses of the programme, go through the grades that they've achieved. I'll then get some sort of information on what the players are currently interested in. Obviously, they all say football still, because that's what they want to do. But it's down to me to kind of probe a little bit more and see if there's any sort of outside interest that they would like to do alongside football or away from football. If there is, then I get as many resources together as I can for the players, whether that's information around university courses, college courses, local contacts for heads of department in colleges or schools that they might want to go and get some experience in. Again, we liaise with the LFE and the PFA. I really push the PFA to the players because that's something that they've supported me with in terms of my education, and they're continuing to do so now. So I really encourage the players to make contact with the PFA, whether that's the regional rep or even the club captain at the club who's the PFA rep, to see if they can be put on to somebody at the PFA. So yeah, it's just having that initial contact, finding what they might be interested in. I always try and, when they say they want to play football still, I get that. I always try and push dual career and use examples as well. Obviously, you've got professional players that are doing degrees, set up their own businesses. We had an ex-scholar at Barnsley. He was on the Apprentice, I think it was. So I use examples like that. I've got articles around World Cup winners going on and studying and things like that. So I try and use as many resources as I can to try and push something else alongside football. But yeah, it's just getting as much information as I can to them and obviously guiding them to whatever they want to do.
Brilliant. And in terms of the role of this, is, I suppose, a personal question to you really, what do you find the most rewarding part of the role?
Seeing players develop as people as well. My role as such is, although I'm a football person, I'm not really geared towards the football side of it. I understand that they want to be players, but whenever they come into the building, me and my player care, we have a kind of a mission that we want to improve them as people as well, and give them skills that they can take away from the football club that are gonna benefit them later on in life. We have like cooking lessons set up for the players. We get them to do stuff like that. Take them shopping. So obviously little things that we take as normal. When you're a young footballer coming in, you get your meals at the club, your breakfast, stuff like that. So we try and take them outside of the football bubble, so to speak, and give them skills and skill sets that are going to benefit them later on in life. It's little things like that that's most rewarding for me. Obviously, when you see one of the lads get distinctions across the board in his BTEC and then go on and earn a professional contract and play in the first team, that's absolutely brilliant. But I know that that's not going to happen for them all. So yeah, making sure that they get the qualifications and then giving them skills that they can take away with them.
And in terms of, we've spoke a lot about the education side of your role, but obviously in that is also the welfare aspect as well.
Yeah.
So what I suppose within your role, what comes under that welfare part of the role?
It'd be things like the life skills stuff that we put on for the players. It will be the mental well-being that we run, the workshops that we run. We've got a character development program in place at the club. It has topics in there such as like identity, things like that. We've got it's like a personal people development aspect of our character development program, which has things like employability skills, workshops that we run, things around like safeguarding, stuff like that. So it's kind of that side of it is an add-on to my education role. So it's the whole holistic side of the player really.
Yeah.
I liaise with Diggs as well to see if Diggs is fine, if the food's all right in Diggs, things like that, and also things like making sure that players can open up bank accounts, sort out bills, car insurance, stuff like that. So it kind of the whole package really, the welfare side.
And like you say, it's those things that I think a lot of people don't think about when a lot of players are in a bubble through no fault of their own, aren't they, throughout their playing career, and there's things that some people take for granted that if you've never been shown or taught how to do those things, then you're almost crippled at times because of it. So no, I think that's a really important part of the role to get across to people. So,
I mean, it is good, because I think the lads, when we put on the first session of, just something simple like, right, this is how you set up insurance or something like that, the lads actually realise that you're buying into them and you're interested in them as a person and you're interested in what they're doing apart from football as well. So you kind of, the lads get that you're interested in them as people, and I think after that it's easier to get buy-in from the players.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of the current climate that we're in, obviously we're in this pandemic and it's we're having to find some kind of new normal. So within your role, how are you currently trying to support players? Because it's obviously, I suppose, for players where football has been their life, and for a large, for a long time they haven't been able to play and to do anything. So how have you looked to support players within, while this pandemic's been going on?
Yeah, I mean, we've had, I'm constantly in touch with the players, making sure that they're all right. If there's any issues, then they know that they can come to myself or the player care officer that we've got. And the player care officer that we've got has delivered workshops as well for the players via Zoom. So it's just trying to put as many things in place as we can to ensure that it's still a bit of normality for them in terms of having contact with us as members of staff. I'll put little infographics in the group to the players around how to cope with learning while the pandemic's been going off, how to prioritise your learning and things like that. And I've been getting information out to parents as well to help players. So yeah, it's just been trying to maintain some sort of normality, and I think the biggest thing with that is the players knowing that they've got contact with you as a member of staff, knowing that they can pick up the phone if they want, or they can drop me an email or a text if they feel like they need support with something. So I think it's just being there for the lads more than anything. Like I said, we have sent infographic stuff out to the players and how they can cope and things like that, but it's just me personally, I think just being there for the lads helps.
Yeah, and in terms of, it's a bit of a random question this, I suppose, but you also have a role with the FA, which is something quite similar. But how do the roles differ from club to associate? Working for the FA, how does it differ?
I mean, obviously they're pretty similar in terms of the education and welfare side of it. The difference that we've got is contact time. Obviously, I've got more contact time with the players in club because I'm in every day. The role that I do at the FA is for the girls' talent. So they have hubs that they have access to, and I'm one of the education and welfare officers at those hubs. So it is pretty similar in terms of, like, say, education and welfare, but it's the contact time that's different. I have to try and build that relationship with players and parents a lot quicker on the hubs than I would do in club, because, like I say, I've got a limited amount of time with players at the hub, so it's kind of building that relationship as quick as I can to then try and get as much information to the players and the parents, and obviously vice versa, them giving me as much information as they can as well.
I suppose that's where those the skills that we spoke about earlier on in the conversation, that communication side, I suppose when you've got even less time to build that rapport, that's where those communication skills are even more important.
Yeah.
And in terms of, you mentioned earlier on about professional football becoming more professional. So do you feel that the role, from a welfare and safeguarding perspective, in terms of the support you provide players, do you feel like that's shifted slightly, or has it changed at all, given how professional the environments are? Sometimes with that comes pressure. Do you feel like the support you need to provide players has increased or decreased, or has it changed at all?
I mean, obviously, with me only being in post for 2 years, I don't know what it was like before then in the professional game. I'm only used to the procedures and things like that happen in school, and the access that students have got to different resources and skill sets in terms of the staffing and levels in school. I'm used to that. Coming into football, I have been really impressed with the amount of support that players get. I think the PFA do a brilliant job in terms of supporting its members, and also as well, I think the Premier League and the LFE do a brilliant job of getting life skills programs embedded into clubs. The LFE support us in terms of, we get 5 workshops a year, and we've always got access to a member of staff at the LFE, myself from the club's point of view. So yeah, I mean, the range of support that the players do get, I think is really good in football, and I think it's only going to improve as well. I think the provision's probably going to get even more that the players are getting. But like I said, from what I've seen in the 2 years that I've been involved in football, I have been really impressed with the amount of support that players do get. These, you know, organisations are always in clubs offering the support, giving the lads an idea of what is available to them, not only while they're in the club, but also away from club and after football as well. So I have been really impressed with it, yeah.
And I suppose the final question, we obviously run a bespoke football degree, which covers all the science, you know, the FIS, the psych, performance analysis. And within that, we also have the UEFA B licence embedded within the programme. So what advice would you give to current students or future students in terms of balancing their work, their work within university and within the applied environment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky that the academy manager kind of supports staff with that. It's something that I'm really lucky to have in terms of a teaching background and coaching as well. I'm on my A licence at the moment, so I should get that signed off hopefully when we get back in next season. And I think the skills that I've kind of had in teaching in terms of being able to time manage and prioritise has helped me alongside getting my B licence done a few years ago, and then obviously on my A licence now. So I think it would be, the take-home message I would say is learn to get into the habit of prioritising what's important in the now, what's important in the immediate future, and what's important in the distant future. I think that would be the best advice I could give to students. I did my degree while working in a school, so I kind of had to do that as well. I had to learn that quickly. So yeah, it would be that side of it. I'd probably say to students to focus on, really get into the habit of prioritising and learning to time manage.
Brilliant. So, well, thank you very much again for your time today.
No
Those are all
worries.
the questions I have. Again, really informative. Like I said, it's something that we've not covered in terms of that role of head of education and welfare. So I think it'd be really interesting for a lot of future students and people who are just passionate about football as well to understand the role. So thank you very much for that.
No
and we will talk again at some point soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. Take care.
All right, no worries.